What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope everybody's doing wonderful today. I got to tell you guys real quick about something wild that just happened to me. The other day, I came across John Cena's heel turn. We've all seen it. We've all been waiting so many years for it. And then I go on his page, I give him a follow, and the next morning, I wake up to him following me back, and I was just so shocked at the moment because I was like, John Cena, what the hell are you doing following me back? Then I go on his page, and I peep he's following damn near a million other people back, so it didn't feel as special, but it still was insane to me that John Cena gave me a follow on X. You know what else is insane? The last OG member of the San Diego Chargers has just been released, that being Joey Bosa. We're going to dive into why it happened and where his next destination is going to be. The Eagles have created a new trend for how running back contracts are going to be structured in the NFL moving forward after giving Saquon a record-breaking extension. The Kansas City Chiefs are in trouble, and everybody seems to be ignoring it. I'm going to be exposing why Kansas City's dynasty is about to slow down in a major way. And then the media seems to be running a smear campaign against Shedeur Sanders. We'll dive into that and a few other things going around the NFL. Before we get into it, though, do me a favor. Help your brother out, rank higher in that YouTube search algorithm by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, turning on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Also, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the pinned comment and description below. And let's dive into it. The Chargers are moving on from the last OG member of the San Diego Chargers era. They are releasing star pass rusher Joey Bosa. This is a move that took way longer to make than what it should have. In the last 5 years that Joey Bosa has been on the Chargers, he's only been healthy one time for a full duration of the season. Outside of that, you're lucky if you can even get 10 games out of Joey Bosa. And with this move, the Chargers free up $25 million in cap space. And they have so much money to spend in free agency that I expect them, once this offseason concludes, to be in the conversation to win it all. That's how good this team is going to be with how much money they're going to have available to use to acquire younger talent. You could go after somebody like a Josh Sweat, a younger pass rusher than what Joey Bosa is at the moment. Right now, he's 29 years old. He's about to hit 30, and there's a pretty good chance that he could start to experience some regression. But right now, though, despite getting released by the Chargers, he still is a really dominant player. Last year, he went to the Pro Bowl, believe it or not. And when he is on the field, which isn't really that often, he still is one of the top edge rushers in the league. So he should have a pretty big market when free agency begins. But the only place I feel Joey Bosa should think about playing next is the San Francisco 49ers. If the 49ers don't sign Joey Bosa, it should be a crime. There's no way any of you guys shouldn't want to see the Bosa brothers team up. When's the last time we've seen two brothers in the NFL that started on the same side of the football play on the same team? I don't remember. Maybe some of you older fans out there that are listening to this can give me a few examples the last time it's happened, but I would love to see Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa raise hell coming off the edge, causing nightmares for opposing quarterbacks. The 49ers need another pass rusher alongside of Nick Bosa, so signing Joey Bosa would make a lot of sense. And he still is a really good player. The problem is he just isn't on the field. Joey Bosa is the definition of fragile luggage. If you just breathe on him the wrong way, the brother breaks a bone. If you can keep him healthy for at least 10 games or for the second half of the season, that's a steal. That's how injury prone Joey Bosa is. And when I was reading through the comments on Instagram and Facebook of people's reaction to the news, there were a good amount of folks out there that were a little bit surprised, and they didn't really understand why the Chargers were moving on from him. And that's mainly due to his name. When you think of Joey Bosa, you instantly think one of the best pass rushers in the game. But if you have watched Joey Bosa over the last couple of years, you've probably been wondering where he's been. And that's been on the sideline in street clothes. So that's why the Chargers had no choice but to move on from him. And honestly, they probably should have moved on from him at the start of last year. But with their cap situation, they kind of were just better off just running it back with him for one more season. But, he served his time. He did a great job for the Chargers when he was at his peak and he was able to stay healthy. But now they have to get younger. And thinking of Joey Bosa and what he has meant to this organization, he's one of the better draft picks that they've made over the last couple of years. And the Chargers normally do draft pretty well. But, Joey Bosa may have been their finest draft pick that they've made over the last decade that I've been following them as a fan of the league. So it's just a little bit sad to see the last OG member of the San Diego Chargers let go, but on with the old, and with the new. And I'm excited to see who the Chargers bring in to replace Joey Bosa and where Joey Bosa's next team is going to be. Not only have the Eagles made history making Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back in league history, but they also have set a new standard, a new trend for how running back contracts are going to work in the future. Running backs prior to last season, they were devalued. Not because they weren't talented and they weren't important parts to having a good football team, but due to their short shelf life and how easily replaceable they were. But then you have Saquon Barkley come around. He signs a great bargain deal for the Philadelphia Eagles with the fact that you only had him for $13 million and he gave you 2,000 yards on the ground. He was an MVP candidate. He was an instrumental part in you winning Super Bowl 59. It reinvigorated the importance of the running back position. When you have a player of Saquon Barkley's talent at running back, it takes so much pressure off your quarterback, and it just makes life easier knowing that you have somebody that you can go to, and in one play, he's a threat to take it to the house every single time he touches the football. You can't tie Saquon Barkley to the positional value that every other running back in the league has, because he's not a traditional running back. This guy's just a weapon. You can line him out wide. When you get him one-on-one against a linebacker in pass coverage, he's winning that matchup 9 times out of 10. Saquon Barkley is one of the most talented running backs that the NFL has ever had. And the reason why teams have been so scared to commit to running backs long-term and give them lucrative contracts is because it wasn't worth the risk. Largely due to what happened with Todd Gurley and Ezekiel Elliott after they signed their massive contract extensions. When Todd Gurley got his big contract from the Rams, he was out of the league at the age of 26, 2 years after he signed that 4-year extension. The Cowboys gave Ezekiel Elliott a 6-year extension. In 2019, they cut him 3 years later at the age of 27. Running backs have a short prime, and they fall off incredibly fast. Like, as soon as you pay these guys, they could fall off as soon as next year. But what's different about Saquon Barkley's new extension and a new trend that the Eagles just set with his record-breaking deal is that they gave him a shorter length contract that has a higher guaranteed salary. And you now are going to start seeing more teams do this. It's smarter to give a running back a lot of money on a shorter term deal, because let's say that Saquon Barkley, worst case scenario, he does fall off or he does get injured and the Eagles got to move on from him. Okay, you don't have to take a huge cap hit to do so, like how the Rams and the Dallas Cowboys had to do when they moved on from their star running backs when they fell off, because you only signed them to a 2-year extension. So therefore, you're not committed to him for 3-4 years. And the thing with running backs is, with how fast they tend to fall off, you don't want to be tied to them long term. It's better off to keep signing them to short-term deals where you give them a lot of money. Yeah, you know, if a guy falls off and you're paying them $20 million a year, it's an L, but you rather take the L, paying a guy $20 million that year, to have to fork over $40 million over the next 3-4 years, and you just have a defective player. I don't think that's going to happen to Saquon Barkley, though, because he is a Hall of Fame level player. Hall of Fame level players tend to regress at a slower rate than the positional norm. But for other running backs that are seeking new contracts, like James Cook, eventually B. John Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, we could see those guys get maybe a 2-year, 3-year deal, and it benefits the team because you're pretty much telling these running backs, if you want to continue to make this high amount of money, you have to continue to produce year after year. If you have one off season, we get rid of you. You feel me? So it just helps the team kind of protect themselves a lot more financially than what the Rams and the Cowboys did when they gave those long-term contracts to Todd Gurley and Zeke. And, you know, this is probably the smartest way to go about this because, you know, all parties are happy. The team doesn't have to risk being tied up to a guy long-term if he ends up falling apart. And the running back, you know, yeah, you probably would want a longer-term deal, but how are you going to turn down, you know, $20 million if you're Saquon Barkley? How are you going to turn down, you know, top 5 money at the running back position? You know, if you're getting 13, 15 million a year, more than what most running backs have been making these last couple of years, it may be a shorter length contract, but you'd be foolish to turn down that kind of money, especially knowing how short of a career you have playing this position. Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles once again have outsmarted the NFL, and expect more teams to start copying this contract model for how they negotiate with running backs, because it just is such a win-win for both sides involved. The Bears got Caleb Williams some new bodyguards, people, and not no cheap ones neither. They got him that presidential security now. Within the span of the last couple of days, Chicago has acquired offensive guards Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. They got Jonah Jackson to trade from the Rams, and they recently acquired Joe Thuney the other day from Kansas City. Joe Thuney, although he is up there in age, he still is, one of the 3 best interior offensive linemen in the game. And Jonah Jackson, he had a career year in Detroit under offensive coordinator Ben Johnson a few years ago. Now all the Bears need to solidify their offensive line is a center and a left tackle. And then Caleb Williams will finally have everything he needs up front to have a good season in year 2. And for Chicago, you know, getting Ben Johnson has shown me that this organization is committed to winning. It's been widely thrown out there that this organization, they're a little cheap, they're a little frugal, they're scared to make moves, but ever since they've made Ryan Poles their general manager, they've been a little bit more aggressive when it comes to acquiring talent. It just seems like now, when they have a huge lingering issue, they don't take forever in the day to address it. They knew the offensive line was the biggest issue that they had to solve this offseason. And that's the first thing that they prioritized. And that's why I'm confident that Ben Johnson is going to succeed as the head coach of the Bears. If they would have hired any other head coach, I don't know if they would have made these moves. Because as soon as he took this job, in his first press conference, he said, you know, we got to protect our franchise quarterback. We got to improve the offensive line. Normally, you have coaches and general managers acknowledge needs, and then they push them in the back burner for other positions. Like last year, the Chicago Bears should have addressed the offensive line. But instead, they went all out on giving Caleb Williams some good receivers to throw to, and it doesn't matter how good your receiving core is if you don't have enough damn time to throw them the football. With the new bodyguards that the Chicago Bears have just given Caleb Williams, this offense is going to take a monumental leap next year. You're now going to have more consistency on the ground. One thing about DeAndre Swift that gets constantly criticized about him is that he doesn't really have good vision, which means that he's heavily dependent upon his offensive line creating holes in the running game for him, because if they don't do it, he's not going to be patient enough or have enough vision to find those holes when they eventually open up. So with this offensive line improving, not only does it benefit Caleb Williams, giving him more protection, but it also helps the ground game out and takes a little bit of the pressure off his shoulders. I felt like Chicago relied on Caleb Williams way too much considering how bad their offensive line was. You can't be asking a rookie quarterback to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game behind an offensive line that as soon as he drops back to throw, immediately there's a guy right in front of his face about to knock his head off his shoulders. So these are two moves that the Chicago Bears get A-pluses for, in my eyes, in terms of grades. It doesn't really matter how old Joe Thuney is. The brother's better than anybody the Bears have had playing offensive guard for the last 4 years. You can't be a complainer at this point. You got to take what you can get. And Joe Thuney was probably the best offensive guard available, not just in trade, but he's better than anybody they probably could have signed in free agency. And Jonah Jackson, reuniting him in a scheme that brought him the best season of his career, that's a good move as well. And you didn't really give up a lot of high draft capital neither. You got these guys for mid-round selections, like 4th and 5th round picks. So these were two really good trades that the Bears just pulled off. I got to give a lot of praise to Ryan Poles. He definitely has made some really good moves as the GM of Chicago. He definitely has had a few misses as well, but I feel like he's had more hits than misses. And I'm really excited to see how the Bears continue to build this team around Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson taking over as the head coach. The Kansas City Chiefs are in deep trouble, and it blows my mind how everybody is ignoring it. Y'all do realize that as good as a coach as Andy Reid is, arguably the best head coach in NFL history, he's in the division with 3 other future Hall of Fame coaches. Last year, Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton led their teams to the playoffs despite not having that much talent and having salary cap constraints. Can you imagine how good both of those two teams are going to be next season now that they have money to spend in free agency? The Chargers have the 5th most cap space available going into the free agency period, and the Denver Broncos have a good amount of cap space as well. And then you have Pete Carroll, who is the new head coach of the Raiders. You have a division that's home to 4 Hall of Fame coaches. This is the toughest division in the NFL now. It no longer is the AFC North. The Raiders are not going to be a slouch next season. The Broncos and the Chargers are one good offseason away from catapulting themselves into the Super Bowl conversation. They got it all now. They got good coaches. They got stability at quarterback. Now they just need to continue to improve their roster. And the gap between them and Kansas City won't be wide anymore. If anything, the AFC West is wide open at this point due to the huge question marks the Kansas City Chiefs now have. You are losing a few marquee free agents like Justin Reed. He's going to be on the free agency market. You're probably not going to have enough money to keep him around, and you probably aren't going to have enough money to improve your offensive line. They now need another offensive guard, and they need 2 offensive tackles. Right tackle, you still have Jawan Taylor. You probably aren't going to be able to move on from him until the end of this year. And then at left tackle, you're going to have to figure out a solution to that problem. Maybe you can find a good bargain in free agency, or maybe you can strike oil in the draft, even though this isn't really that good of an offensive tackle class. But the Chiefs are in a situation where this is probably their most important offseason under their Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes regime. Because if they end up not being able to improve their offensive line, and they end up looking like how they did during last season. Yeah, they went fit. Yeah, they only lost one game. Technically, the last game didn't count because they benched their starters, but the way they won last year isn't sustainable. You can't expect to win every single game, blocking field goals, getting somewhat lucky in the end with certain calls and whatnot. With the Chargers and the Broncos about to elevate the level of talent on their team, the Kansas City Chiefs now are not in a position where you can just look at them and say, yeah, it's a guarantee that they're going to win the AFC West. And eventually, we're going to reach a point in time where the Chiefs are no longer as dominant as what they've been these last couple of years. Do you know how insane it is that Patrick Mahomes has been one game shy of the Super Bowl every single season he's been the starter of the Kansas City Chiefs? That's insanity. The worst season that the Chiefs have ever had was them losing in the AFC Championship to the Cincinnati Bengals. That's it. Eventually, you're going to reach a slowdown point where they end up losing early in the playoffs. Not saying they end up losing the wild card, but they probably end up losing in the divisional round because the talent in this division is at an all-time high. And we saw the Patriots dynasty get to a point where they started to slow down and they weren't in the Super Bowl for at least 4 or 5 years. Like, Kansas City is eventually going to get back and win another Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're never going to win another one, but what I am telling you guys is that with how difficult the AFC West has now become, Kansas City, their path to the AFC Championship has just got a lot more difficult. Now, there's no guarantee that you're always going to have a home field playoff game from winning this division. It's not easy anymore. You're not going to get an easy sweep against the Chargers or the Broncos or even the Raiders anymore. There's a good chance that you could split with all three teams. Hell, you could finish in third place next season and still be in the playoffs. The AFC West could have 3 playoff teams next year. This is no longer a division that it's just home to the Chiefs winning it so easily every single year like the Patriots used to do with the AFC East. One thing that the Patriots never had to worry about was going up against a Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton or Pete Carroll. They didn't have to worry about going up against 3 other Hall of Fame coaches 2 times in the season, going up against 2 promising young quarterbacks in Justin Herbert and Bo Nix. This division it's too tough for the Kansas City Chiefs to continue to dominate the way they have over these last couple of years. I expect for us to have a new AFC West division champion for the first time in a very long time this upcoming season. I know it's very early in the offseason to say that. The Chiefs, they could make a few moves that surprise us to fill these 3 big holes that they have on the offensive line, but you know, with how much spending power the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders have, and with the talent they got at coaching as well, it's just hard for me to fathom the Chiefs dynasty continuing to dominate and run shot all over the AFC any longer. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where this division, they're on the same level as Kansas City. It's just they got to prove it on the field, and I expect to see that happen this year. You know, it feels like Shedeur Sanders is running for president with the smear campaign that the NFL media is running against him. So you mean to tell me that there's not a single anonymous coach that the media can find that has anything good to say about Shedeur Sanders? Every anonymous coach they talk to just has something bad to say about Shedeur Sanders. You see, the NFL media is assassinating Shedeur Sanders' character. They're throwing rocks and then they're throwing their hand, or they're throwing rocks and they're hiding their hand behind these BS anonymous sources. You see, Shedeur Sanders honestly should sue the NFL for defamation of character. The way he gets talked about, people are making it seem like this dude is the biggest locker room cancer in NFL history. Like, he's the second incarnation of Satan. If these lies tank Shedeur's draft stock to the point where he falls out of the first round and he ends up missing out on that big, massive, multi-million-dollar contract that rookie QBs get being first-round selections, he has every right to sue any member of the NFL media that put out a report that involved an anonymous source that wasn't proven factual. That's the thing about anonymous sources. How do you really know if some of these media members truly reached out to an anonymous source? Because it's just so easy to say that, yeah, I talked to an anonymous source and he said this, and not have to prove that this source actually said this. There's no way to prove if these media members actually do have legit sources. You can make up a rumor out of thin air and just put an anonymous source behind it, and then boom, people are going to somewhat think that it's credible. Anonymous sources are only to be used when you really have to find some deep information that you're using in an expose, like the Watergate scandal. You needed an anonymous source for that, due to, how tight-knit the White House was, and everybody not really wanting to get caught snitching. And even then, the anonymous source eventually got revealed, but it's like you can't do anything to him now. But the point of having an anonymous source is to get key information that you wouldn't be able to find anywhere else, and it's supposed to be used as a last resort. And really, you only protect the anonymous source, and you don't reveal any information about them just for their livelihood, because you don't want them to lose their job. You don't want their families to have to suffer any ramifications from any information they may reveal. In a situation where you're talking to an anonymous coach about bashing the character of an upcoming NFL quarterback, you don't deserve to be protected. You can't just shit on somebody's character, demean them, try to portray them in a certain light, and then you get the hide behind the anonymous source claim. No, reveal yourself. I want to know who these anonymous sources was. Who was that quarterback's coach who was calling Shedeur Sanders bashful? I want to know. I truly want to know, because you deserve to get routed out to the public. If you can make these claims and cause somebody to lose generational kind of money in the first round, your name doesn't deserve to be protected. When you're causing people millions, like how these anonymous sources could cause Shedeur to lose if he truly does fall out of the first round, he deserves to get compensated, and he has every right to sue them. You guys keep running with these claims, and y'all piss me off with it, because every time people interview Shedeur Sanders' teammates, from Travis Hunter to Jimmy Horn Jr., they have nothing but good things to say about him. Y'all do know the main reason why Travis Hunter flipped his commitment from Florida State to Colorado, or to Jackson State, was because of the relationship and the bond that he built with Shedeur. It just really frustrates me how y'all continue to paint this picture of this young man who has done nothing but been a model citizen on and off the field. He hasn't been arrested. He hasn't gotten into any off-the-field incidents that would cause you to say, oh yeah, he definitely is a big cancer. You shouldn't draft him. He's going to ruin your locker room. You see, the media has a much different picture about Shedeur than what actual players have. You want to know why? Because these players are actually around Shedeur Sanders a lot more than what these media members are. You're trying to paint a picture about Shedeur Sanders of a few tweets that he made about a teammate, responding to a teammate that was calling him out because he felt entitled that Shedeur Sanders should give him a little bit of his NIL money because he was breaking bread with other teammates. You know, you guys hate Deion Sanders so much that you don't want to do proper research. You just want to run with whatever story paints Shedeur Sanders out to be a villain. And that's what makes this so embarrassing. This is a disgrace to the integrity of journalism, of all of these reports and stories that continue to come out about Shedeur Sanders that are bullshit and false. There is nothing wrong with Shedeur Sanders being confident having a little bit of arrogance about him. You want your quarterback to believe that he can make any throw. You want your quarterback to believe that he can turn around any franchise. I find it funny how everybody was against Shedeur Sanders pulling the Eli, but then all of a sudden at the combine, he says, if you're not trying to change the culture, don't draft me. People view it as him being smug, being overconfident. So it's bad that he believes he could turn around the Cleveland Browns. It's bad that he believes that he can turn around the New York Giants. So what do you want the brother to say? Oh, I'm not that good. I don't think I'm good enough to win anywhere I go. So if he wasn't confident, you would say, oh, he's scared. He isn't confident enough. Shedeur Sanders is never going to win regardless of what he says. Every media member that was in attendance at the NFL Combine said that Shedeur Sanders was nothing but a class act. Of course, he had a few interviews that he intentionally bombed because there are certain teams that he doesn't want to go to. And he has every right to, not want to play for those teams. Why would you want to play for the Cleveland Browns if you truly don't want to go there? If I have 20 job interviews, and out of those 20 interviews that I get, only 10 of them I'm actually interested in the position I'm getting interviewed for, why would I be interested in the other jobs that are interviewing me if I don't really plan on having any interest taking that job? If a player doesn't want to play for you, it's not an indictment on their character. It's just the fact that they want to be in a better position to succeed. And if anything, it's an indictment on you as a franchise if any player in the draft doesn't want to play for you. The main reason why these players choose to pull Eli's is due to a franchise that has consistently showed that they never put a young quarterback in position to succeed. So therefore, it makes all the sense in the world for Shedeur not to want to play for Cleveland. Because look what just happened with Baker Mayfield. Look what's happened with some of the other younger quarterbacks they drafted, like Deshaun Kaiser. I'm not going to use Johnny Manziel as an example because he just was a head case. But it's just, I really find it irritating. Somebody that graduated with a degree in journalism, all of the poor journalism that has been going on, with how people are trying to run these smear campaigns to ruin Shedeur Sanders' draft stock, to paint him in a light that just simply isn't true. How you perceive Shedeur is not how other players perceive Shedeur. I trust what these other players say about Shedeur Sanders versus what some rando in the media is reporting from an anonymous source. Stop hiding behind these anonymous sources. Reveal yourself. If you can cause somebody to lose millions of dollars in the fallout of the first round, you deserve to have your name revealed because you just costed somebody generational money. I'm not with all of this criticizing somebody's character nonsense, especially when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, man. I could understand if it was somebody like a Kyron Lacey who got somebody killed, but I'm not about to do it for somebody that has never committed a crime, has never got arrested, has never gotten suspended, has never gotten into any incident off the field. You're running with a narrative that the media is manufacturing. You don't know if they actually are talking to these anonymous sources. How are you going to prove it? You can't. That's my point. For over the last 2 years, the Baltimore Ravens have been looking for a third option at wide receiver. They've tried OBJ, Nelson Aguilar, recently Deontay Johnson, but they haven't worked out. And we're going into free agency again with the Ravens needing another wide receiver, which is why it makes all the sense in the world to bring back Hollywood Brown. And before you guys start coming at me in the comment section, oh, JT, you tripping. Hollywood Brown was garbage. Y'all Ravens fans forget that y'all drafted Brashard Perryman in the first round. His ass was garbage. Don't be coming at me telling me Marquise Brown was garbage when he was held back by Greg Roman's offense. Greg Roman's offense limited the production of every receiver that he's ever coached. Look what he just did as the OC for the Chargers. You saw how ugly that playoff loss to the Texans was. Greg Roman doing what he always does, cooking up those elementary passing concepts that are so easy to defend, not doing a good job of scheming guys open. It's no surprise the Chargers lost the way they did against the Texans in the wild card round. But with Todd Monken, a.k.a. T-Money, being the offensive coordinator, you've seen the passing attack of the Ravens elevate tremendously. We've seen Lamar Jackson elevate to a level that we didn't even know was possible, because I thought that Lamar Jackson couldn't get any better. Well, the dude just proceeds to throw over 40 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and have one of the most efficient quarterback seasons that we've seen since Aaron Rodgers won MVP in 2020. You put Marquise Hollywood Brown and the Todd Monken offense with Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson, the Ravens pretty much would have assembled the 954 Avengers. What is 954? If you're from the South Florida area, specifically Broward County, you know what the 954 is. These Florida boys are different. And if you reunite Hollywood Brown with Lamar, along with Zay Flowers, the 954 Avengers would be the key to the Ravens finally being able to deliver a Super Bowl for Lamar Jackson. You need one more weapon in that offense that can completely make you unstoppable. Now you'll have Derrick Henry. How are you going to stop him? You're going to have Keaton Mitchell fully healthy coming off that season-ending injury from a year ago. You know, you're going to have a 3-headed trio of Rashad Bateman, who's going to be your big body receiver on the outside. Then you're going to have Zay Flowers. Then you're going to have Marquise Brown, who can play in the slot. Or you can move Marquise Brown outside and force Zay Flowers to play in the slot. Because Zay Flowers is, to me, a better slot receiver than he is as an outside receiver, although he is just as good playing both. But I would rather see Zay Flowers in the slot a little bit more, just because he gets more favorable matchups against these slot corners versus these outside corners that he gets lined up against. And the thing about Hollywood Brown that has been overlooked about his career is that he's never been a good Batman. He's never been a good number one option. But when you are able to pair Hollywood Brown with a true wide receiver one, like a Zay Flowers, and you also get another good wide out to go along with them, like a Rashad Bateman, and you can make Marquise Brown like your second or third option, your offense. He is a really good player. And the Ravens can get him for a really cheap deal. With how much his production has dropped off ever since he got traded away from Baltimore, you could sign him for a 2-year deal worth $7-8 million a year. And then you'll have more money to allocate to other positions versus giving a guy like Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams a 1-year deal worth like $15-16 million. It just makes so much sense for the Ravens to bring back Hollywood Brown and to reunite Lamar Jackson with his partner in crime. Lamar was not happy when Hollywood got traded. And look, if Lamar wants Hollywood back, all he has to do is make one phone call. We know that Lamar Jackson has a lot of pull in that Ravens organization. And the thing about Marquise Brown wanting to get traded wasn't because, he hated the Ravens. He just hated the system. Greg Roman's gone. Todd Monken's in now. I would love to see Marquise Brown back in Baltimore. We need the 954 Avengers. If Lamar wins a Super Bowl, it ain't going to be right if it ain't without Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown and Lamar were like Batman and Robin. They were like Kodak and LeJack Boy, man. I really feel the Ravens getting Marquise Brown would be a sneaky addition that could catapult them to winning the Lombardi Trophy. You don't really have that many more years left of prime Lamar. Why not bring back the guy that he has the best connection with? You put him in an offense that now is more favorable for his skill set. He's going to be able to produce more than what he ever did the last time he was in Baltimore. I don't think that the relationship between Hollywood Brown and the Ravens organization is not fixable. It's not like they left on bad terms. All he wanted was to be in the offense that featured him a little bit more. And now coming back to be more, he's going to have that opportunity. And like I said earlier, he's not garbage. We seem to forget the Ravens wasted a first-round pick on Brashad Perriman. He was trash. I felt like Hollywood Brown was a solid receiver. He was a good number 2. He just wasn't a true number 1, and that's why he somewhat was a disappointment as a first rounder, but he still had a season when he went over 1,000 yards receiving. And who knows how good Hollywood Brown would have been if he just would have waited a little bit longer before he requested a trade. What if Todd Monken would have got hired by the Baltimore Ravens a lot sooner? Maybe Marquise Brown could have went for 1,300 yards. He's always been a really good deep threat. The only issue with him has been his hands, but every receiver has had their fair share of drops. I've seen Rashad Bateman drop passes. Hell, you getting mad at Hollywood Brown saying he's garbage because he always was dropping passes. Mark Andrews dropped one of the biggest passes ever in the history of the Baltimore Ravens franchise. You kidding me? I mean, if we're going to forgive Mark Andrews for dropping the potential maybe game-winning touchdown, you got to get mad at you can't hold that against Marquise Brown either, man. Drops are just a part of the game. The Ravens bringing back Hollywood Brown would make so much sense. We need to see the 954 Avengers in Baltimore, because if this team up happens, if we actually do get the 954 Avengers assembled and be more, the NFL is going to be in a lot of trouble, because now Lamar is finally going to have his army, his squad. He's going to have his team. He's going to have everything necessary to be able to finally get it done. If you get Marquise Brown, he is that one missing piece that can elevate the Ravens to what they've been trying to get these last couple years, and they've been coming up short of doing. Bring Hollywood back to Baltimore. Reunite Lamar Jackson with his partner in crime. Please. There's a weird situation going on with Jordan Travis and the New York Jets. For those of you guys who don't know, Jordan Travis was a 5th-round pick by New York in the 2024 draft. He had a great career at Florida State that ended with one of the worst injuries in the history of football. He pretty much broke his leg and dislocated his ankle at the same time. And this injury is just a few notches below in severity to the injury that Alex Smith sustained. This is a gruesome injury. I don't encourage you guys to rewatch it because it's very graphic. I threw up when I watched it happen live, but it was going to take a year and some change for Jordan Travis to fully rehab and recover from this injury, and he never is going to be ready to play his rookie season. But the New York Jets, being the organization that they are, they drafted Jordan Travis with the thought that he potentially could be ready for training camp. So surprise, surprise, training camp rolls around and Jordan Travis isn't able to participate. So they end up having to wait, shut him down, and then they end up rushing his rehab late during the season, according to his agent, which caused him a further setback. So now Jordan Travis is in a situation now where we don't really know what his future is with the New York Jets, because a lot of Jets fans keep asking about Jordan Travis because they want to know, are we ever going to see this brother suit up in the all green for the Jets? They do have a huge question mark at quarterback, and if Tyrod Taylor is their option, you definitely can afford to give Jordan Travis an opportunity. I want to see what Jordan Travis has. He had a really good career at Florida State. He improved every single season as a starter for the Seminoles. Not only was he a really good runner, he was a little bit similar to Jaden Daniels in terms of his running style. He's kind of like herky-jerky, really fast, really elusive, but he was really good throwing the football. His final season at Florida State, he had 20 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. And if he would have continued that pattern of growth at the NFL level, I felt like he eventually could have turned into a capable starting quarterback. And there still is a chance that he can. But I don't know if we ever are going to see Jordan Travis suit up for the New York Jets. I don't believe that day is ever going to come. You see what this organization did when they tried to rush him back from injury. And with him just scraping all of his ties to New York Jets off his social media accounts, maybe he asked for a release. Maybe he has to get traded. Now, I don't know what team would trade for Jordan Travis, given the fact that, he's coming off an injury that has that level of severity. We don't know if he still is going to be remotely the same athlete post-injury that he was before, because when you suffer an injury of that magnitude, it is hard to bounce back to the level that you once was, because you pretty much broke your leg and your freaking ankle at the same time. So you have to kind of get both back to 100%. And when mobility is a huge part of your game and you get a lower body leg injury of that magnitude, you do lose a little bit of juice. So for Jordan Travis, we don't know what's next for his NFL future. We don't know if he will ever take a snap in the NFL. If he gets released by the Jets, maybe his best opportunity is going to the UFL, playing there for a year, getting some film out there, showing teams that, hey, I still can play at a pretty good level. He gets invited to a camp, he makes a roster, and boom, anything can happen from there. But, if he gets released, I don't know if there's going to be another team that picks him up. It's not like he was viewed in the highest regards as a draft prospect anyway when he was coming out of Florida State. Most draft analysts and scouts out there had him graded as like a 6th, 7th round pick, somebody that maybe could develop into a capable backup, a solid starter. But, with how much he improved every year at Florida State, I really felt like he could have been a potential starting quarterback in the league. I still do, but, with him being on the New York Jets, we don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Maybe they could sign somebody in free agency. Maybe they draft somebody as well. And that further moves Jordan Travis down the depth chart. It's just unfortunate that a guy like Jordan Travis that has so much potential and so much talent fell into the laps of the most dysfunctional organization in the NFL at the moment.